For many people, one of the most challenging aspects of progressive MS is dealing with the emotions that go along with living with progressive MS. Here to talk about dealing with the emotions of living with progressive MS is clinical neuropsychologist, associate lecturer, and researcher at University Complutense of Madrid, Professor Fabiola García Vaz. Professor García Vaz is a chartered member of the Official Society of Psychology of Madrid, a chartered member of the British Psychological Society, and a member of the National Commission for Accreditation of Clinical Neuropsychology of the National Council of Psychology of Spain since its founding in 2017. And this time, instead of waiting until the end of Professor García Vaz's presentation, please fill in your answers to the quiz questions during her presentation. And please remember to have your questions ready, as we'll be answering your questions at the end of Professor García Vaz's presentation. Now, please join me in welcoming Professor Fabiola García Vaz to the stage.
Good morning to everybody. It's a pleasure for me being here and sharing with you this moment to learn together about emotions of living with progressive MS. First of all, I want to thank to the organization for inviting me and trusting me to share this time with you. And secondly, well, I hope us to enjoy together and we can learn a lot. As John said, we have a quick quiz, so I will appreciate if you can really answer whilst the talk, and we share the results together later. This is the plan for today. We are going to talk about mood disorders in progressive MS. We will face the challenges and coping strategies for secondary progressive multiple sclerosis, challenges and wellness in progressive forms in MS, and resilience and MS. Firstly, we'll see what literature is saying about mood disorders in progressive MS. Mood disorders are very common among people with MS. We already know that depression is prevalent in MS community, and it affects around 27% to 53% of the patients. It has been postulated that major depression diagnosis occurs twice as often in progressive MS than in inflammatory forms, independently from disease duration and physical disability. This is a very interesting point to keep in mind, independently from disease duration and physical disability. What's happening with persons with progressive forms to have more depression and mood disorders? It has also been said that significant relationship was observed between disease duration and tendency to type A personality related with higher stress in inflammatory forms, whereas negative correlation was seen in secondary progressive forms. These patients tending to type B personality, lower stress when disease duration increase. So at some point, we are saying that when the disease duration is higher, maybe we have more resilience or more abilities to cope with the stress. Let's go on. Mood disorders, fatigue, and cognitive symptoms have been described as invisible symptoms that may have a major negative influence on health-related quality of life. I want to show you briefly this study. Taylor and colleagues published this year this study about feelings of depression, pain, and fatigue, and how anxiety are the more strongly associated with lower quality of life in multiple sclerosis, in progressive multiple sclerosis. But look at this. If we can see this figure, in blue for inflammatory forms, in orange secondary progressive, and in green primary progressive, we can check that there are no great differences in this quality of life, but there is a common thing. It's like depression and pain were the strongest predictor irrespective of MS phenotype. And this is very important. So depression and pain are influencing the quality of life much more than disability and than other components related with MS, independently on the phenotype. But I also want to show you this study about progressive multiple sclerosis and MAD disorders. This group, the group of Lorefice in 2015, they want to study the role of these mood disorders, and they study major depression disorder and bipolar disorder. They have a smaller sample of progressive forms, as usually, and bigger sample of inflammatory forms, but there are also important differences in their groups in duration disease, disability measured by EDSS, depression diagnosis, and only bipolar diagnosis is similar, the presence of bipolar disorder. But the important information is in this table 4 that we can see in up right. Look, after practicing a logistic regression analysis, only progressive course was predictive of major depression. This is the part. So what's happening now? What we can see is that there are bigger prevalence of depression in progressive and inflammatory. This is a big predictive. Only being progressive is the predictive of depression, and the depression influences in the quality of life independent on the type MS phenotype. Well, if we go on and we go on advancing, we can see that these authors conclude that the prevalence of depression disorder is higher in person with progressive MS compared with inflammatory forms, independently of the disease duration and physical disability. Although there were differences in disease duration and disability between inflammatory forms and progressive groups, they didn't find association of these variables in mood disorders. So this association may be a step in the study of the pathogenic mechanism underlying the development of mood disorders among MS patients. What's happening in progressive forms? Okay, let's have a look. We are going to dedicate some minutes to the challenges and coping strategies in secondary progressive MS. This study aims to see what is, the study uses a longitudinal qualitative design to capture people's experience after transitioning to secondary progressive MS. The majority of the participants reported expecting to transition to secondary, and the diagnosis did not make much difference to them. Participants described increasing emotional and physical challenges after transitioning to secondary MS. Planning, using distractions, and maintaining social roles help participants cope with increased challenges. A key theme here was the sense of abandonment from healthcare services after transitioning to secondary MS, described as a lack of direction for symptoms management and lack of support for the healthcare system. They asked to the participants about when they first diagnosed of MS, about how they found that they have moved to secondary progressive type of MS, about how they think, how they felt about having MS now, and the things that have helped or that have been unhelpful when dealing with these new challenges. And they conclude three main information: emotional and physical challenges, coping strategies, and health system. About emotional and physical challenges, the strategies to manage emotional difficulties included distraction, such as playing video games, reading books, going out for a meal with friends and colleagues, and practicing mindfulness. One important thing, so it's the role of distraction and social support. And in the social support, partners played an important role in the emotional supporting the participants by helping them to adjust to the new MS challenges. A relevant key point here also is the increased mobility problems. And the participants generally say that getting involved in charity work, MS research, and helping others gave them a new purpose. They learned new things and met new people. So this is an important part, the relevance of social support and how important is getting involved and feel that we have things to contribute in our community. But what do we know about coping strategies? Participants said that detailed planning, distraction, and remaining as active and as involved in the community as possible help them to cope with the transition to secondary progressive multiple sclerosis. And what about the health system? Participants would have liked to obtain psychological support at this stage to be able to deal with emotion. And one of the requirements, or part of the requirements, is that despite the pharmacological treatment, patients reclaim treatment for bladder control, walking, pain reduction, emotional well-being, even cognitive symptoms. So it seems that there are parts related with health system that we still have to improve. There is a recent study from Mika colleague that studied the experiences of adjustment to secondary progressive multiple sclerosis. They do a systematic review that we are going to analyze now, and they define the secondary progressive multiple sclerosis as a progressive accumulation of disability after an initial inflammatory course, which may or may not contain sharp episodes of decline during progression. This progression from inflammatory to secondary happens within the 15 years of initial diagnosis, and in 50% of the cases, and takes a median of 20 years. The target of this study is recognizing the understanding of adjustment experiences to better support people with secondary forms. It's very interesting because what they are doing here, sorry, because I think there is a part of the slide that cannot be seen. Well, in the left part of the screen that I cannot see properly, maybe you can see better, there is a study from Bogosian that they were talking about, in 2017, they identified 3 ways of face the secondary progressive diagnosis. One of them is scaling back, another is resigning, and the third one was accepting. What Christopher Meek and colleagues does is that they see all the papers that have been published until October 2019 related with the strategies of coping. They firstly identified more than 2,000 papers, but finally, looking for the proper information, they do a meta-analysis of 12 studies, including in this analysis. Then they identified 3 big coping strategies. The first of them is denial. The second one is resigning, and the third one is accepting and being able to deal with to cope or to deal with the disease. About coping strategies and denial, the patients say that they are struggling or they have difficulty to accept the progressions versus another reliefs. For the patients and the people that they have asked, it seems that it's easier to understand or to think that they are going to be able to recover as they have done it before from the relapses. I'm sorry because I have not a very good sound. Diego, I don't know if you can help me because I'm listening to myself twice, so I'm not being able to talk properly. If you can help me from the control, I will appreciate it. Diego, Marta, excuse me to talk in Spanish. Si me podéis ayudar, por favor, que me estoy escuchando doblemente. No puedo hablar bien. Now only one. Hola, ¿me escuchas? ¿Qué tal? ¿Cómo estás? Hola. 1, 2, 3, probando. Sí, ahora escucho el rebote de tu ordenador, pero no me oigo 2 veces. Gracias. Okay. I think that it's sorted out. I'm sorry to the audience that we can go on now. So we were talking about the coping strategies. Sorry about that. These authors find, as I told you, that there are 3 main coping strategies. Denial is the first one, reducing and resigning, and accepting and adapting. Okay, I'm sorry about that. I think that it has not been solved, but we are going on, okay? If in the meanwhile, Diego and colleagues can do something, I will appreciate that, because I'm listening to me retarded, so it's not helping me to talk to you. Sorry about that. Okay, let's go on. What's happening with the denial? At the first steps of this progressive disease, when we have changed from inflammatory forms to secondary progressive forms, people have difficulties to understand the progression. Sometimes the information received from the healthcare is not fair enough, it's not clear, and on the other side, they feel that they have to keep it a secret because they need time to understand and to accept what is happening. And talking out loud about that makes it real. In the right side of the screen, I will have some presentation, some information about what patients said, but I will share with you anyway, even though we cannot see them. One of the patients said, I was waiting for a cure. I spent quite a while on the internet. There was this Italian guy has found that he think there is a cure. I thought, well, no one's going to make that kind of a statement unless they know something. So we can see that there is this difficult to accept what is happening, and we are looking for external or magic ideas. But there is a patient who said something very interesting. I didn't want to talk about it because talking about it made it real. We are talking about that time, that extra time that sometimes we need to accept these difficult next states. And we can also find this kind of agreement or pacts with universe. It's almost like a different world, you know, which you kind of know that you probably have to join sometime, but you are just kind of thinking, well, not yet, please. About next coping strategy that we can find. We've got them. Okay, I have already read that. Is that they go slowly? That's great that we can see them. Okay, and now let's go to the next slide about the strategy of reducing and resigning. Okay, about reducing and resigning, patients say that this method of reducing previous rewarding activities that they cannot enjoy anymore. This method was very helpful to the patients and was negatively reinforced since they were avoiding the stress that comes when we have to face activities in a different way. But on the other way, they were decreasing You just have to say goodbye to your previous life. Hola? Hey, you just have to say goodbye to your previous life. Isn't possible anymore. And one of the patients said, it's robbed me of a lot of my life. I just feel the world has shrunk. I know I should be saying what I can do. That's the positive side of the things, because that's the way I always be before. But now I'm not that person anymore. These testimonies are very, very interesting and very relevant, because what we are seeing now is that hello? Hola? 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 I think there are some lift problems. I'm sorry about that. Hello? Okay, let's go on. I'm not sure what's really happening, but we have to go on. Now I can see myself, and now I can see the slides. Sorry about that. All right. One of the things that we could learn from the previous slide is that most of the patients, most of the participants knew about the way of a positive way of coping. Nevertheless, they had very hard difficulties to be able to reach that way by themselves. And what's happening with this positive way of coping, this accepting and adapting? The first of all, PANSIS refer planning for the present rather than looking towards the future. Keeping active and at current level of functioning. Having social life, social support, family and friends, associative groups. They were referring about some important part that it's related with finding alternative ways to make life fulfilling, accepting, and adapting enjoyable activities. Cultivating an attitude of positivity helped people with the adjustment. Overall, participants who adopted more accepting and adapting coping styles and carried on being active despite it being a struggle at times, generally presented as having a richer quality of activities and were better emotionally adjusted. Here we have some of the testimonies. I believe that the key to accepting your illness is what is really important. But you have to think, instead of thinking that the life is over now, what do I like to do and how can I do it now? Another testimony, share of the patient said, put in relevance the social support and the partner support that we have already said. My husband put me in the car, we were on shopping, and we have a marvelous time. And this, in the line of the social support, another testimony said, twice a week I go to yoga with a lot of people who also have MS. They are very supportive, and that sort makes life easier. One of the patients said, I still do things. I do phone calls for my husband's company. I do things with my mom, but I just have to learn to pace it. And if I'm having the bad day, then I know I can get lost on. I accept my limitations then. Everything has to be tailored down. Just adapt. It's a struggle, and there is no two ways about it. You get used to that. I've still got to make the most of time. I've got when I can walk around and do things. I suppose I'm still using same strategy as I used when I was first diagnosed. Do as much as you can while you can. Our patient said about the social life, going out with my friends, going for dinner, that was usually that this person liked, sometimes doesn't feel like that much because of cognitive or emotional symptoms and feeling sometimes not socially comfortable. But I think I really want to go, but then I force myself, and you have to go, because when I do go, I do enjoy it, and I do feel better. Your mood is lifted. So it can see that there is a positive way of coping strategies, but here the important thing is this one. Well, these are the things that the patients have been asked about: physical and cognitive symptoms, social connectiveness and sexuality, sense of loss of independence, role in family and social role, loss of confidence, and some aspect related with the diagnosis. But I want to point out this slide that, in my opinion, is very relevant. At the beginning of the diagnosis, most part of the patients are talking in the same way. At the beginning, they really feel that they have this capacity to deny and to conceal. In the early ways of coping this secondary progressive diagnosis, most of the people, or it's an important part of the denial at the beginning. Well, as we have told, that's normal because sometimes we need some emotional time to be able to cope with the situation. But in a second moment, later ways of coping and accepting or adapting and resigning unrelated and affecting the quality of life. Of course, accepting life and adapting activity improves the quality of life because helps me to keep active and helps me to keep socially connected, and helps that the symptoms are not the central part of life. But on the other side, resigning life and reducing activity comes from some external and internal factors. And which are the factors associated with these different coping styles? With accepting life and acting activity, of course, independence, being able to move by myself, having professional support, and heavily social support from family and friends. However, the resigning to life and reducing activity is happening more to people who are loneliness and do not have the social support. They do not have sometimes this professional support, and they have highest level of dependence. So the conclusions of this study is that adjusting to secondary progressive multiple sclerosis is difficult and a stressful time for patients. Coping strategies, patients are dependent on external and internal factors and are determinants for the successful of the adjustment. Clinicians should be open with patients about their assessment of their changing diagnosis, rather than trying to avoid upsetting the patient by withholding information. Clinical services should be proactive in supporting patients during adjustment with learning positive coping strategies and maintaining or increasing social relationship and activity levels. But what are the challenges and wellness for progressive forms independently of their primary or secondary? At this point, I want to have a look to this RAND Europe report that identifies 3 main areas of study of disease progression: loss of mobility, physical disability, and quality of life. They show that the fear of the disease progression is a real issue among people with MS, and that the fear contributes to a lower quality of life. Interviews echo these points, saying that one cause of psychological distress for people with MS is the fear of becoming a burden to their loved ones. A key point here is the role of keeping in the workforce. Many factors affect the ability of people with MS to continue working after their diagnosis. physical disability, being able to walk, to keep hand movement, to have a control bladder, mental health, including mood disorders, having social support in the workplace, and employers' willingness to make accommodations to physical or cognitive limitations. Living or maintaining the workplace has some controversial factors. One of them is the relation with mood disorders. Some of the patients have difficulties to face that they have to stop working, to leave their job, to quit their job, and to leave them. And this affects their mood, so they can have anxiety or depression symptoms. But on the other side, there are patients that they have a stressful life at work because they feel that they are slower than their colleagues, that maybe they cannot fulfill all the tasks that have been assigned, and stopping working becomes in something positive. Another question is the economical issue. It comes from the personal circumstances and also for the social health that we can find in different countries. And the third point is the sense of identity, that we can see it's very related with this ability to cope and with this ability of a strategy. Sometimes our identity is built also not only because of our physical or cognitive or emotional abilities, but also because of our professional role. This loss of role may affect to the person with multiple sclerosis, but on the other hand, some of the patients are happy and are changing their identity, being able to enjoy things that they enjoyed before and now are not able to do with this work. No? Arts, music, walks, and another lifestyle. About the social support, we have already said that it's very important. Lower levels of social support may be associated with increased risks of anxiety. Having more information about the disease, which may improve anxiety levels. And nevertheless, not only physical barriers, but also cognitive attentional deficits or slowness of processing speed and emotional aspects such as feeling less attractive, much influence in the relationships. If I feel that physically and my attractiveness, I feel unattractive, I will not be able to share the time that I used to with some of my friends or colleagues. If I think that I'm slower in the conversation, in the thought, that I have difficulties to find the words, I may feel that I will not be able to have a proper dinner or a proper social meeting. Nevertheless, having a reduced social participation affects quality of life of people with MS and is strongly associated not only with physical impairment, but also with cognitive impairment. So maybe it's something to take into account. This model comes from Bogosian work that we have mentioned before. They said that maintain at the beginning in the progressive forms, patients try to maintain things as usual. After that, they will find the ways of scaling back or finding an alternative to the things that they used to do. Or sometimes when there are increased struggles, as speed, progression, severity of symptoms, there is a resigning. But what's the difference between scaling back, finding an alternative, and resigning? Again, social support, partner support, emotional reactions, and the perceptions on the environment. It's important to point out that during all these moments, not only physical disability is related, but we are talking all the time about the role of social support and mood disorders and how they affect the quality of life. In this study from Vanessa and colleagues, they reviewed the efficacy of wellness-based interventions in patients with progressive MS, published between 1985 and July 2017. They find possible effective evidence for the efficacy of aerobic exercise training on cardiorespiratory fitness in patients with progressive MS. And furthermore, they have probably efficacy of mindfulness training on psychological distress, depression, anxiety, pain, and quality of life in patients with progressive MS. So it seems that mindfulness can be associated with lower psychological stress, greater resilience, and better coping skills, and overall, better quality of life. But what does resilience means in MS? Well, resilience is the ability to face adversity constructively and emerge stronger from the traumatic event. About resilient and MS, I'd like to see the full slide, please. It has been postulated an important mediator of the relationship between disability and the impact of MS. Resilience can affect a person's ability to cope with chronic disease, even though the disease itself can affect the level of personal resources. Jamaica and colleagues show a negative relationship between the neurological disability associated with the course of MS and the level of mental resiliency. It can be assumed that this is the result of the impact of the disease on the ability to cope with everyday situations. It's indicated that positive emotions can affect the development of resilience and increase the probability of attributing a positive meaning to unpleasant events. Resilience affects the processes of affective regulation, positive emotions, and help people to put a distance between themselves and their negative experience and return to personal balance. The relationship between resilience and quality of life can also be explained by the adaptation to the disease. Resilience can accelerate the process of passing through the stages of adaptation. People with high level of resilience are able to break away from premorbid functioning and build self-concepts taking into account the disease, which also improves their quality of life. We have already talked about these self-concepts related also with my role in society, with my role in family, with my physical, feeling attractive, feeling strong, feeling able to cope with the situation. But how can I improve my resilience? There are an important key point that we need to strengthen the resilience and focus in my own resources that get stronger my internal structure, but also in the resources of others that are accompanying me and supporting me. We have already been told about the social support, that it's very important and the heart of the isolation to cope with the disease. So at this point, I will have to work in the control and regulation of 4 key points. The regulation of my mind, the regulation and take care of my body, take care of my emotions, and take care of my soul. At this point, we can see that in this personal process of becoming more resilient, I have to encourage positive thoughts and feelings, practicing self-observation, detecting negative feelings, cultivating a positive attitude, and focus on the positive, what I have, what I can do, what I can enjoy, instead of the loss. One key question, warning. Definitely, we can feel sad, okay? And we will talk about that later. But in my mind, I will cultivate detecting the negative and positioning the positive. I also need to obtain information from reliable resources as health professionals, patient associations and foundations, and platforms as the European Multiple Sclerosis Platform to obtain the information that I need to cope with the disease. But what's happening about working on the control and regulation of my emotions? The first thing that I need is self-knowledge and self-observation. To know that the feeling of loss, grief, or fear for future are normal. To know that if I can take time to recover. To distinguish between feeling and consent. I can feel bad, I can feel lost, I can feel fear. That's different to consent lost to consent fear. I have to put a positive attitude and to be able to request professional help when necessary. For that, I will have information and knowledge about the disease. I know that mood disorders have the origin can have the origin in the inflammatory processes. So sometimes when this inflammatory process has moved to another stage, mood also recovers. From organic damage, from some lesions, maybe in the limbic system or in the prefrontal cortex of my brain, that helps me to regulate my emotions. But I can also believe in reactive processes to the current situation and to the current diagnosis. At this point, we go slowly. Now, I want to rescue the role of mindfulness that has demonstrated stress reduction, improved fatigue, improved quality of sleep, and has reported increased quality of life in patients with MS. The third point is working in the control and regulation of my behavior. For that, I have to keep in mind planning for the present, keeping active at current level of functioning, keeping social life, keeping involvement in the community, keeping employment when possible, externally and internally, as we have said, and finding alternative ways to make life fulfilling, accepting and adapting enjoyable activities. And of course, taking care of my physical body, rest as much as I need. Fatigue is not only a symptom, but also a warning. If I need to sleep, it's important me to do it. I need good night sleep and look for help if I cannot do it. I need daily practice of physical exercise adapted to the needs and possibilities of each one, healthy and balanced diet, taking prescribed medication, and avoid harmful things such as alcohol, tobacco, or substance abuse that will not help me to feel strong and resilience. At last but not least, we are talking about this taking care of the soul, this spiritual part of myself. The spiritual well-being has been shown to influence the adaptation to the progressive course of MS. And we're not talking about from a religion point of view, even though every belief are absolutely part of the person, but we are also talking about the contact with beauty, music, art, nature, practicing habits, thoughts, and feelings that help me to become my best version, practice mindfulness, and help and service to others that we have seen that helps to have a better self-concept, self-esteem, and feeling better with myself. With these 4 key points, I can get stronger and improve my own resilience. But apart from that, there is the next key point, that is improve the resilience related with the rest of the colleagues and with the rest of the friends. We have to strengthen meaningful relationship, also working on trust, communication, knowledge, commitment, coincidence, complicity, and everyday life. What does it mean? It means not only to look for my ability to ask for help and to look for my ability to receive that help and feeling supported. I also need an active role to also take care of the others, to communicate, to know how they feel, and to create these moments of complicity and daily contact. Of course, we cannot have the daily contact with every person that we know, but yes, with the main people that are supporting our lives and that are important for us. At last but not least, and we are already finishing because I know that with these technical difficulties, we are in the stream of the allowed time. We have to make stronger our presence in the MS community. We have to receive the information and training about MS. An informed patient is a patient with better health. Symptom recognition allows early detection of changes and progression. Early detection allows an early treatment and the importance of each symptom to be adjusted without underestimating or overestimating sensitive motor, cognitive, emotional, incontinence. It favors an early and adjusted treatment to each patient and enables to seek appropriate and early help for physical, emotional, and cognitive symptoms. Get involved in the MS community give us and help us to give support from others living under similar circumstances, having knowledge about MS patients' rights in my community, helping others make us feel better about ourselves and our reality. Volunteering increases self-esteem, improves self-concept, and gives us sense of usefulness, increases this personal gratification. So to finish, just some take-home messages to share with you. It's like dealing with the disease progression faces numerous challenges and adaptations to a changing style of life. Stress, anxiety, and depression, fear to future, or sense of loss are common feelings at different stages of the evolution. These feelings are normal at different stages of the disease. Mood disorders and coping styles have demonstrated strongly influence the quality of life of people with MS, with progressive MS, independently of the level of disability. Coping strategies for the progression of the disease can improve, make stronger our resilience capacity. Active attitude will help with acceptance and finding new ways of doing the same things or better new things at this stage. Physical, emotional, social, and spiritual self-care within the possibilities of my own reality right now will improve my attitude, happiness, and resilience. And resilience improves and makes stronger my resources in the community. I need to improve other people's resources because they are supporting me, and I can support friends, family, and community. Thank you very much for your time. I hope this time together was interesting. Sorry for the technical issues that didn't help me to be as fluent as I would like. And well, it's time to see the results of the quiz, and it's time for questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Garcia Vaz. As you can see, the results of the quiz up on the screen. And meanwhile, we have a couple of questions I'd like to get to with you. First question, how can family members cope with emotional challenges while at the same time helping a person who has MS cope with its emotional and physical challenges? Professor Garcia Vaz, do you hear me?
Hi, John. Thank you very much for the question. I will read it also because I have problems with the sound, as you know. How can family members cope with emotional challenges while at the same time helping a person who, yes, but I have a double sound. I will read that. Thank you very much. Yes, this is very important. The role of the family members who have to cope with emotional changes, with their own emotional changes as well. Some part of the things that we have to do is that at some point we will have to say sorry and to do the mourning because we are losing part of the life as we knew it before, and we have facing a new style of life, not only for the person with MS, but also for the family. And the best way to help to the person is to become strong ourselves. That's one of the main things. Family and partners can help persons with MS to cope with the challenges whenever they are good. So they need time for themselves, they need time to improve their resilience, they need time for exercising, to stay with friends, and to have their own life apart from the MS, and also to look for new different ways of sharing the activities with my family and with the person with the MS, the activities that I used to do, and maybe new activities that we can enjoy together. So we have both things at the same time. I hope that I have answered to the question.
You have. I think caring for the carer is very important. We have one more question. How can we help a person that has recently been diagnosed and because it was an initial incident clinically isolated syndrome, that person's being treated, but they're in denial of having MS. So how do you help someone who has not accepted their diagnosis?
I will read it again. How can family members cope with challenges? I have done that now. At the same time, helping a person with that MS scope. Please, can I see the another questions that you have said, John? Because I cannot listen to you.
Well, perhaps we've got a technical difficulty we may not be able to overcome at this point. The question had to do with how you support a family member who is in denial of their MS diagnosis. Hopefully that's something you'll be able to circle back to. I know that some of our young people will be spending time with you this afternoon in a special session that deals with mood and emotional well-being.